It's been a great morning, hasn't it, been so far, with a lot of really quite great introductions, setting the scene from the government side of the equation that we heard from the Secretary of State, as well as from the EU Commissioner, and some really quite interesting conversations as we were looking at kind of the investment opportunities, the risk factors, where it is that we can make investments, and kind of starting to look down now towards some of the businesses that are actually using the water resources, how it is that we can actually work with those companies and those sectors in order to really bring about the resiliency and a long-term water security that's beneficial to our economic well-being, our growth in economies, and for the communities in which we're all a part of, and that these companies are operating. So really pleased to be joined by a number of panelists. One of our panelists is running a little late, so he'll be joining us in about 10 minutes or so when he arrives here, but really pleased to welcome Abby McGuckin, the Sustainability Technology and Innovation Lead from GSK, Scott McCready, the Chief Strategy Officer for Alliance for Water Stewardship, and Thomas Mann, the Director for Infrastructure Strategic Advisory Service at KPMG. So a very diverse panel, different voices and different stakeholders within this picture. I want to start from the high level, right, and looking to see how it is that we can actually, where it is that we're starting to see the opportunities, not just kind of the risks equation and the opportunities around how it is that companies need to manage for risk, but also the opportunity side of the equation. So Scott, I want to begin with you. The Alliance for Water Stewardship works with quite a wide group of companies from different sectors, with civil society and all these different actors. From what you've seen, where do you see that companies have made the biggest progress?
Great.
And where can we do more as we move forward into the future?
Great. Thanks very much, Mai Lan. To explain for people, that the Alliance for Water Stewardship is two things. So we're a membership organisation of multinational corporate water users, service providers to multinational corporate water users, international NGOs and development agencies and government agencies who champion water stewardship. And we're also a standard system. So we're a standard system for use of facilities. So a facility can be a factory, a farm, a data centre, any form of kind of operational unit. Across the nature of AWS, you kind of see different levels of company maturity, and what the opportunity is. To your point, what's the opportunity? The opportunity for a company really depends upon the level of their maturity. So the new entrants into water tend to focus on their own facilities, understanding the catchment context they operate in, water in, water out relationships externally, immediate to them. And our standard is kind of purpose built for that. So our standard guides you from here to here and kind of water management to water stewardship. So the opportunity there is really to make better water users, to decrease risk, to increase kind of operational resilience and stuff. With the experienced water stewardship companies, the opportunity is much larger kind of thing. So they've achieved and gone beyond our standard kind of thing. Their focus now is in positively influencing the operating context. So Nestle are a good example. So Nestle Waters have certified all of their production facilities. Their focus now is on collective action, it's on policy engagement, it's in water security in the places and the markets that they care about. So, for example, the EU Water Resilience Strategy, that's realised through action by states and kind of improving water management in countries and basins and so on and so forth. The opportunity for Nestle is really to work with governments and other water users and communities to improve water policy, regulatory implementation, investment flows, collective action, etc., etc. And they do that at multiple scales. So they do it at kind of like global engagement, they do it at kind of national engagement, they do it at basin level action, and they do it at catchment level engagement. So our standard is really a kind of launching off point.
Great, thanks so much, Scott, for that kind of laying out the trajectory, right, and the potential different options for which companies can actually start to move along this. Thomas, I kind of want to turn to you, right? Yeah. In terms of how do we actually get this in a theme of up in the boardroom? How do we get companies to really buy in, to identify that this is an opportunity, a risk and an opportunity side? Can you speak a little bit into what are the most effective mechanisms? Is it regulation? Is it incentives that enables businesses to really prioritize? And to Scott's point, to the Nestle example, how do we move away from just kind of pure efficiency measures? We'll only get you so far, and towards the actual ones that bring about the outcomes which companies care about of managing their operations in the long term?
Yeah, so in terms of mechanisms, I think a lot of this has been said already today. Lots of really interesting sessions. So this might be a little bit of a summary, but I'm hopefully can add a little bit more. Especially maybe if you're a transformation lead or a sustainability lead, and you're looking to try to actually affect change, in your organisation. Sort of conference friendly. I've got 3 R's for you. So yeah, regulation, reputation, and resilience. When it comes to a business case for managing water, for reducing the consumption of water, I think principally we're talking about it as a cost or as a factor of production. It's quite relatively simple, right? So everything I think that I'm going to talk about can be considered as a cost-benefit analysis. And what I think I'm trying to get across is that it's the robustness, the complexity of your cost-benefit analysis that you're presenting that's going to be the mechanism that drives change. Mm-hmm. So if you, in the UK, the regulation part of it, the UK in particular, and I think a lot of what we've heard as well, the simple mechanisms are about the cost to your business of just consuming water. So that's that's classic, addressed by operational excellence, efficiency, lean tech, these sort of things. Once you move past that, if you're looking at then changing your systems, whatever you're doing in your business, lots of different businesses here, right? You then need to push into transformation, and you're making a much more sophisticated business case because you're going to be investing heavily in change. And we've seen these discussions around using waste effluent and all this sort of stuff. I think in terms of the regulation part of it, the cost of water in the UK, the retail cost of water, I don't think is going to move the dial in terms of the way that businesses think about water. Either the business retail market and the way it operates, I don't think it's going to drive a huge reduction in consumption. And all of the recommendations, even in Cunliffe, around changing the unit cost, for effectively water gets cheaper than what you use, that's even addressing that's not going to materially move the dial. So I think if you're thinking about it from a cost perspective, it's maybe not going to be so compelling. I think the environmental impact perspective and the impact that has on resilience is going to be the big issue. So that's either if you're abstracting and you end up with hands-off flow restrictions, or if you're using potable water and you end up with other kind of restrictions in a drought. So my point on reg, sorry, I'll be quick. My point on reg is you have to proactively manage your engagement with your regulator. Yep. Some hard lessons here from water companies, from water utilities. You have to educate them. You have to engage. You have to build that relationship with them so that they understand your business complexities, and then you can really own that relationship and own that change. From a reputation perspective, my second R, you need to get ahead of the regulation. If you are focusing on if you're not there managing your reputation, you're going to leave yourself with a huge reputational risk. Lots of social value opportunities around showing yourself to be forward thinking in that space. And then the last one, resilience, I think we'll get to it later, but that's going to be the primary driver. Factoring in the cost to your business of disruption into your cost benefit analysis when you're presenting the investment cases for changing. Right. And yeah, I have other thoughts on it, but we'll get to it in a bit, I think.
Super. Thank you so much, Thomas. Abby, turning to you. GSK's done so much, right? You've kind of one of those leaders who have been doing a lot of work within the water space for quite a long time, and quite kind of all-encompassing. Can you tell us how it is that you've been able to move it from a nice to do to kind of a core part of kind of operational sustainable and resiliency, and how you managed to get that board level buy-in that is not just around kind of the quantity quality side of the equation, but also including the people and the access side into your programs?
Thanks, Mai Lan. And thanks. It's a really nice jumping off point for where you left us, especially on the 3 R's in resilience. GSK is a global biopharma company. We manufacture medicines and vaccines, just for a bit of context. While the environmental impact of water is crucial and fundamental as part of our transformation vision of our role in water and the strategy, it's really about health for us. Mm-hmm. Access to water is fundamental for human health and to make life-saving medicines and vaccines. It's core to purpose, it's core to mission, it's key. So this is why we set really ambitious targets for both climate and nature, including fresh water across quantity and quality, but also access. We, as a science-driven company, we take a science-based approach to understand our impacts and dependencies on nature. Mm-hmm. It's in our DNA, so to speak. And this led us to become one of the world's first companies to adopt verified science-based targets for natures. Again, really following and leading with the science. These targets are public. We are always excited to talk about them. But moreover, they have full executive leadership and board support with frequent updates and full governance. This is because our leaders know that long-term operations for GSK and access to medicines depends upon freshwater access. And it's fundamental to our mission to get ahead of disease together.
Super. Thank you so much, Abby. I'm going to open it up. I'm going to kind of integrate some of the audience participation earlier on in some of the panels. So I just want to pause, see if there are any questions from anyone in the room or online. I don't see anything coming on Slido. But yes, gentleman in the back.
Thank you very much. My name is Rupert Douglas Bate. I'm from Global MapAid. And I couldn't agree more with what you've just said, Abby, about the vital need for water as a matter of public health. And my NGO, it's a non-profit, Global MapAid, we're building an AI system for groundwater determination to try and help push that forwards. So really, it's not so much a question, it's more of a confirmation and an affirmation that you're absolutely on the right tracks here. When countries don't have water at that level, it ends up in catastrophe. And we're seeing that played out in several places across the planet now. So thank you.
Thank you for that contribution. Any other quick question? If not, I'll go back to the panel. Quick scan the room. Okay. Super. Well, I want to move into kind of moving beyond kind of how do we bring board level buy-in into this, into where some of the companies have the biggest challenges, right? Supply chains and communities, where a lot of this kind of plays out. So this is to anyone, to all three, to anyone on the panel. Can you give us, and I want to get like really clear in terms of how, so that we can learn from the different lessons here. Do you have clear examples of activities that you or organizations are doing that will take the lead to improve supply chain improvements, or to address the concerns that are raised by communities? What does that look like, and what is an effective program in these spaces? Scott, Abby?
Yeah. I mean, I can. The first thing is supply chains are more complex to work with than owned operations for the very simple reason that you don't own them. It's sort of like, so if you own things, you make the decisions, and the investment is yours, and so on and so forth. Another distinction is, particularly from a community perspective, is the footprint of supply chains and the ability to leverage supply chains. So when we talk about community supply chains, you recognise distinction between sectors. So something like food and beverage, they make and they sell things, but there's generally tends to only be like one or two in a particular market or whatever. Whereas companies who buy and sell things like apparel companies, or people who buy semiconductors or fresh produce or whatever, they tend to buy from the same places. So they tend to buy from the same places, which means there's a high density of suppliers within a single place. So your ability to affect change in that place is much greater, because there's the density, but there's also kind of like a number of your peers who are there, so you can lead towards collective action. So a good example is Bangladesh. So we are working with Resilient Water Accelerator and kind of like several others I'll mention in a minute to work in Bangladesh. Bangladesh, 80% of the exports are kind of linked to the apparel sector, so that creates government buy-in. They care about it. And in Greater Dhaka, there are like several thousand water-using suppliers. So that's several thousand facilities using water. So that can be positive or it can be negative kind of thing. To make that into a positive change, what you're then really talking about is systemic change within a sector. There's no point in me turning up and saying, "Hi, I'm Scott from AWS. Do you want to do my standard?" Kind of thing. The opportunity is much, much bigger than that. And it's really about how brands relate to each other and the suppliers that they share. It's how different sustainability standards like ZDHC, Cascal, HIG, and so on and so forth relate to us. It's how private and public finance can be mobilised for kind of investment within individual facilities and investment in the municipalities and the industrial parks that they work in. all of that is about kind of building a pathway for sectoral change within a place. And that's genuine community transformation in terms of kind of like the scale of the water resources. So for us, it's quite early days, but it's something that we're working with Water Age Resilient Water Accelerator, Primark, H&M, Gap, GW, Global Water Intelligence Corporate Water Leaders Programme, a range of sustainability standards, World Bank, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's the future for kind of like big scale community kind of like alignment kind of thing.
Super. Thanks so much, Scott. Gunnar, welcome. Lovely to have you join us. So we're just having a chat in terms of how do we actually start to elevate boardroom buy-in on water and sustainability overall. But also in this case, what Scott was responding to was actually going beyond kind of your own operations into supply chains, into communities. And how do we actually do that in a way that actually leads to the outcomes that impact on people? Would love to get your thoughts in terms of what you're looking to. What are you measuring? How do you understand what's happening on the ground? And how do we know that we're actually leading to the changes that we want to see?
Welcome and sorry to be late. So I was just flying in from Lapland. I can just share there was a lot of water. It was frozen. That's the good news on this one. No, 2-3 perspectives from my side, from UPM side into this one. So I think measuring is a super important element. Of course, I mean, typically the targets are long-term, they are complex, and then we break them down into science-based targets. Also share a little bit, and at UPM, it's also from my point of view, the first company I worked with, where we really break it down then into tangible progress that we measure really continuously. So we call that a UPM clean run standards. And because we see it really as a strategic asset, really every town hall, every internal meeting, every presentation, every discussion with the leadership team or in a plant or in a mill starts basically, besides safety, with a review of the clean run standards and where we are. And I have to say that does magic, because then from a management level up to the people working in the mill or working in the plant, so everybody knows what the status is. Also, managers are required then to go visit the sites, visit the projects, review what it is, and that goes up to the supervisory board. So I find that's a very tangible, well-working element for us on how we measure things. The other very important thing for us is, and I think like many companies potentially here in the room, of course, we measure on our plants level. So what's the amount of waters coming in, amount of waters coming out? But we also feel that this is not enough. So we as UPM, we are one of, I think, 17. I think that's the latest number of global companies that signed up to this science-based targets for nature program, where we try to really explore now and go beyond, because we really feel, looking at it as a strategic asset, just measuring the water in the mill is not enough. So we really want to and foresee as a vision that we really work even closer with communities to make sure, are you as an organization, as a company, are you a part of the problem or are you part of the solution? What's really your role in that ecosystem? And then we always believe in numbers. I think that's an important element. So in those cases where we worked as UPM with communities, whenever we introduced science-based numbers, targets as a basis for discussion also with the communities and the regulators, then we usually saw very good progress and very good ideas.
Wonderful. Super. Ab?
Yeah, I'd love to pick up there.
Yeah.
Thanks for that response and congratulations on our science-based targets for nature. Measurement, of course, is key. And we're really excited that the strategy has now evolved to a part where we can start to measure our impacts and have those proof points. Supply chain and community engagement is key for our freshwater program. So our approach for freshwater extends from our operations and into our supply chain. We go really deep with suppliers that are co-located with us in high water stress basins. Like us, we ask them to practice water stewardship, commit to water reduction targets, and join our collective action efforts on shared water challenges. We walk the talk and we ask our suppliers to really walk with us. They're our neighbors, quite frankly. In 2024, we became basin champions of the Godavari Basin in India. This is a water resilience coalition initiative, and we do this alongside Diageo as a water user in the basin. The first event we did as Basin Champions was hold a supplier summit hosted by our global chief procurement officer. There, she outlined the strategy for water to our suppliers and their role in it. We also had WaterAid there to talk about the Women in Water Collaborative, which is a collective action on water access that we're a part of, as well as our replenishment partner that's a local and community-based initiative, local to the Nashik region. Scott was even there.
Yeah. Denise was too. Thanks very much.
Yes.
Yes.
So just to give you a bit of an example. And now we're really excited to extend our efforts to new locations through a 5-year partnership with WWF, focused on water restoration with our suppliers, with a community focus as well. This will take our efforts deeper and into across different regions of India and into Pakistan as well.
Super. Yeah, it's so much work that's being done, right? So, Thomas, I want to turn to you. Everyone's kind of spoken into kind of the work in supply chains and so forth. From your perspective and those you're working with, how important has the supply chain been for companies? Are they really embedding it into their resiliency strategies? What is that looking like, and how successful?
The rest of the panel can tell me I'm wrong. I think there's quite a long way to go.
Yeah.
I think maybe ask in organizations who's managing the supply chain. Is it commercial procurement? Is it ops? Who's managing social initiatives? Are ESG, agendas being managed as a comm strategy or as a core part of the business, like you describe? And who's managing risk? And how is risk seen? So when I was describing earlier my 3 R's and this sort of a better way of looking at cost benefit, have you got an internal price for water in your business, which has more factors, that you're costing in? And how are you managing risk? Are you following your risks all the way end to end? And are you really? It's quite complicated, right? It's like scope 3 emissions. Looking at supply chain risk, it's hard enough worrying about my own operational resilience with my, water in my production facilities. But then, am I making sure that my suppliers are able? When I was, to get the, to close the loop here. When I was Googling some stuff before the panel, I was reminded of the Rhine in 2022. Right. It's I don't think it quite got there, but it's drying out. Water levels are dropping. Coal barges are going to be potentially restricted, and you think, well, suddenly, okay. So for things like data centers, if we're looking at maybe energy as the way of not using so much water, but then we need more energy, but now the whole thing is a cycle, and we end up with energy resilience. I think that end-to-end system is quite difficult to manage. And I don't think just focusing on the tragedy of the commons is going to work, because that's the point. That's the reason why it's a tragedy, right? That's not going to get you there. So as a business, you have to try to protect yourself, I think, as part of the system.
Right. Scott, you want to come in?
Yeah, just to pick up on that. All supply chains are not the same, right? So we work with Apple, and somebody talked about TSMC earlier on. So TSMC are a big supplier to Apple, Foxconn, etc., etc. Sort of like, so getting supply chain action and Apple's supply chain is pretty straightforward. It's quite easy. Getting supply chain action in a kind of food and beverage company supply chain or a supermarket supply chain is quite difficult, because there's a lot more money in a kind of an iPhone than there is in an avocado.
Yeah.
Of like so scale and kind of location and so on and so forth. The other thing is the kind of like, what are you focusing on? So the AI thing is sort of like there's a kind of various discussions about data centers. It's like, well, what are data centers? They are big black boxes full of semiconductors and stuff like. Right. So there's an operational thing, but there's also a kind of like. So we did a lot of analysis with WWF, and the majority of the impact is really in that semiconductor supply chain.
Correct.
It's sort of like rather than the operation.
Going down to minerals.
Yeah, exactly.
We haven't talked about. Anyone else want to come into the supply chain communities piece? If not, I'm going to turn to the audience, either to provide some inputs, any reflections from anyone's around this, or a question to the panel.
You probably just find the left.
Oh, wait, there's some questions that have come on through Slido. I'll pick out a couple ones. Abby, to you. How does GSK think it can manage the pollution resulting from medicine use? As a public water authority, so a public water authority is asking this question, that there's planning on spending quite a bit of money to address this issue, and how does GSK manage kind of pollution use from sources? Yeah.
Sure, thanks for the question. Obviously, water pollution is a core topic. As mentioned, it's fundamental to human health as well. You've probably seen then the Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive, which is picking up on this topic directly. We're supportive of managing micropollution with a balanced and fair approach. And it's time, it's a worthy conversation. And thanks for asking the question.
Super. A question to you, Thomas. It's come in is, if the unit cost of water isn't going to drive boards to take note, how can we actually monetize resiliency and reputations effectively?
Yeah, so my point wasn't that the cost wasn't going to drive. I think cost will be the thing that drives board. It's just expressing the cost to the business in a with a multi-criteria rather than just the unit cost of the water itself. So if I didn't make that clear, sorry. So the idea of the 3 R's was that you understand the regulation and the cost that's going to drive. You understand the reputational risk and the cost that can drive, and you understand the resilience risk. We've seen car manufacturers basically, and food retailers in a big trouble because of cyber risk. Yeah. That's not the same thing as, so boards are worrying about cyber risk, they're worrying about AI disruption, they're worrying, about energy outages. I've worked with banks who had half-day outages because a universal power supply didn't work on a trading floor. It cost hundreds of millions of pounds, lots of internal audits. I don't see why that isn't directly transferable to water outages in a lot of different companies. I think maybe that's the way you express it to board, and that's how you get them to focus on resilience. I would also say that some of the technical stuff that people were saying earlier isn't very well understood. It's obvious. The stuff around water is obvious, but it's not front of mind. So that it is heavy, that it is local, that it doesn't flow uphill easily, that it becomes a very local issue that's very broadly important to you. But I think also when you talk about resilience, we're talking about timing. We're not talking about the total annual amount of water available. We're talking about timing and resilience for very small pockets of time under drought, mostly. Your point's about community initiatives where water is scarce all year round is different, right? But in some places like in Europe, really we're talking about managing drought. So when we're thinking about the technological solution, you're talking about managing short periods of outage, and maybe by being much clearer about what you mean when you're talking about resilience and water in businesses, you will drive real action and decisions rather than just general conversations and put it in the risk register and won't worry about it when it's too late.
That's right. Super. Well, we've got 2 minutes left. I want to ask, going back to some of the themes that have come through today, is a question around policy and regulation. So what, if you had 30 seconds with any policymaker, what would be your ask to that policymaker that would drive change? I'm going to start with Gunnar.
Yes.
Please.
First of all, reliable regulation that is also kind of enforceable. I think that what I have in mind is, of course, our supply chains very much are local, but our business is global. So we compete across continents with other players as well. And we see with the technology that we have also that as a competitive advantage besides a sustainability aspect as well. Our learning was always, if you have a common databases, if you work on the basin or on a watershed level with all stakeholders aligned on that level, typically, once then the incentives and the alignment is there, progress is very fast because very often technology is already there. Yeah. It's more the common understanding and then to incentivize and motivate people and get much faster. When it is about applications, approval processes, they are, in many countries where we operate, cumbersome, take long. More speed would be, I think, good for all of us, but also good for the companies as well. So transparency, speed, reliability.
Super, thanks.
I think Jessica from the EU Commission mentioned that the only time I heard the phrase integrated water resource management. It's sort of like water stewardship is simply a private sector user's response to the shortcomings in integrated water resource management. So I want to see countries take advantage of the emerging and growing interest in private sector water users wanting to have better water resource management.
Super. Please.
In the UK, see water sector regulation transform as an opportunity to be part of rather than a threat. Work together and a lot of the stuff in the Cunliffe Review rings true to basically everybody, I think, in the sector. So, see it as an opportunity.
Great, super. Abby?
Yeah, fully aligned. It's really a real red panel on the policy piece. And thanks, Gunnar, for covering off the corporate points.
Great. Well, super. Well, thank you so much to everyone. Just a couple of, it's very clear, like we saw that the need for kind of data transparency, targets, science-based targets really drive that decision-making, elevating it into board level. Some really great examples of what you see about how you can actually work across different actors, particularly on the ground, to address some of the supply chain challenges that we're facing now, and the need for that reliability of regulations and so forth, and to really embed this into kind of resiliency aspects that's long-term, and that you can actually understand the risk and the costs of it. So a hand for the panel, and thank you so much.
Bye-bye.